Welcome back. When it comes to your garden, it's okay to be confused about all the different things you have to consider, like what type of soil do I use, how often should I water, and what about fertilizer? Well, that's one of the most overlooked components of a healthy garden. Here to tell us why it's important is Master Gardener Michael Ismail. Michael, so nice to see you again.
Likewise, good to be here.
I know we're going to be learning a whole lot about plants when you come, and this is honestly something I've never thought about, fertilizer. So how important is it to fertilize certain plants?
Well, with a lot of plants, it's very important. And think about it this way. If the nutrients that a plant needs aren't present in the soil, then it's going to start running into problems. And plants are very similar to people in interesting ways. If you consider what it's like when a person has a nutrient deficiency, you start noticing some symptoms. And it's the same thing with the plant. And by going and looking at them and seeing how they're doing, you can start noticing some signs of those deficiencies.
That's a good point. Everybody has their own chemical makeup, and they require different types of supplements, so to speak. Sure. And so how does one determine which plants need fertilizer and which ones don't?
Well, as a general rule, you're going to find that your native, well-adapted plants, they tend to thrive in low fertility soils, so they're less likely to need fertilizers, but you might still notice some deficiencies in them. But it tends to really be more of our plants that aren't so native. You know, citrus is a real common one that people tend to have a lot, and they oftentimes are going to need some fertilizing, and certainly your home garden. Those are good examples of plants that definitely need some additional nutrients.
Definitely not native plants, right? I mean, those vegetables, you know, you don't see green peppers growing in the middle of the desert, definitely. But if you have a good garden and good fertilizer, you can. And so we're seeing this board that you brought, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. That actually reflects on some of these packages, right? Describe what that is.
It does. And actually, you can find them in these three numbers here. In this case, for this citrus mix, you'll see it says 633. So that is the nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. So those are our main nutrients, our macronutrients that we're trying to get into the soil. And so you'll notice those in different quantities. And on this citrus mix, this is already made for a citrus tree, and so it's in the quantities that tends to benefit a citrus tree. You'll notice over to your left there's a bag there of Happy Frog, and it says 555 on it. That would be considered an all-purpose balanced fertilizer because it's balanced. It has equal amounts of each of these types of macronutrients.
Fascinating. So each one has it marked on the front there depending on what you observe, what you diagnose, so to speak. That's what you call it. And so what are different ways that somebody can look at their plant, look at their vegetable, and say, there's a certain deficiency here, here's what I need to get for it?
Right. Well, you know, I think we can all know what really a healthy plant looks like. You know, nice and green and healthy looking. You know, if you start noticing some differences, discolorations, maybe some of the edges of leaves dying, things like that, that can certainly be a consideration. Let me show you a couple different examples of some things. This one is a potassium deficiency. You'll notice yellowing around the edges and some little bit of browning on the edges, and so that one is really common in potassium deficiency. Also, this is one with our vegetables that people run into a lot. So you have these nice, beautiful pepper plants or tomato plants, and you get something on the fruit called blossom end rot. And this can be a sign of a calcium deficiency. Now, this is where things can get a little bit complex because this blossom end rot can also be because of irregular water. So here's a little trick for you. If you have a vegetable garden and you're growing things like peppers, tomatoes, also squash, when they start to bloom, they need a lot of phosphorus. So you can side dress them with rock phosphate, and that has a lot of calcium in it. So you're giving them what they need for blooming and putting on fruit, and you're also giving them calcium.
Got it.
So if you still run into this issue, then maybe it's a watering issue and you have an irregularity of water. So some of these things you can be kind of proactive, and that will stave off some of the issues that you might have otherwise.
Well, and there's so much to know, so much to learn. I know you have just one more slide behind this before we go of the different publications, rather, that people can go get more information because there's a lot to learn, is the fact.
Yeah, well, so, you know, you're asking the question of how can you really tell what a plant needs. So I recommend these publications. You'll see, you can find this on the website, extension.arizona.edu, and you can look these up by keyword, look up nutrient deficiencies, and you'll find things that have guides like what are some of the signs on the plants and you know, what can you add to the soil that can help.
Michael Ismail, as always, you're such an expert at this. You're like a scientist. Well, you are a scientist. You're turning the rest of us into scientists. I'm going to let them know a little more info. And I want to thank you so much for joining us.
Much appreciated.
Definitely. Now take part in the free demonstration garden tours every Wednesday and Saturday starting at 9 a.m. You can also speak to a master gardener in the plant clinic by calling 520-626-5161. And for any more information, log on to extension.arizona.edu/Pima.